March 17, 1943. Berlin. The folder hit the mahogany desk with such force that Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's coffee splashed across the classified reports, the kind of mistake that could mean execution if the Gestapo ever found it. "Impossible," he whispered. "The Americans are feeding us propaganda." Through the tall windows of the Abwehr headquarters, he could see the Landwehr Canal, where Rosa Luxemburg's body had been thrown 24 years earlier. Now, as chief of German military intelligence, he held a report that threatened not just Nazi propaganda, but the mathematical foundation of German victory itself. The report claimed that in a vast American factory in Michigan, the Ford Motor Company's Willow Run plant, a new B-24 Liberator bomber was rolling off the assembly line every single hour. One every hour. Each B-24, a machine of 1.5 million parts, 450,000 rivets, and 30,000 individual components, was emerging from an assembly line faster than Germany could produce a single military vehicle. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz had triple-checked the figures. The numbers held. Neither man knew that this moment, this single report, would mark the beginning of the greatest intelligence failure of the war: Germany's complete inability to comprehend or believe the true scale of American industrial power. It had begun 2 years earlier. In 1941, Luftwaffe General Karl Köhler had brought to Hermann Göring reports from Washington, from the German military attaché, General Friedrich von Boetticher, warning that American aircraft production was nearing 2,000 planes per month. Göring had laughed. "Americans?" he scoffed. "They build refrigerators and razor blades, not bombers." 4 days after Pearl Harbor, Göring told Hitler at Wolfschanze, "Their democracy makes them weak. Their mongrel blood makes them inefficient. Their Jews make them corrupt. They cannot possibly produce what they claim." By March 1943, German intelligence networks across the Americas were reporting something that defied every assumption of Nazi ideology. Mexican industrialists, Spanish diplomats, Swedish businessmen traveling through Detroit, even letters intercepted from American workers to their families in neutral countries. They all said the same impossible thing. Ford's Willow Run plant alone was producing more heavy bombers than all of Germany's aircraft factories combined. Oberst Nikolaus Ritter, head of the Luftwaffe's Air Intelligence Section, spent 3 weeks reviewing the data. A former Lufthansa pilot who had lived in New York during the 1920s, Ritter knew the pace of American industry. He'd watched the Chrysler Building rise from his apartment window, steel, glass, and ambition, reaching skyward in less than 2 years. His conclusion was simple and devastating. "If these numbers are true," he told Canaris, "then Germany has already lost the war. It is now only a question of mathematics and time." The intelligence had traveled through dangerous channels. In Mexico City, Georg Nikolaus, running the Abwehr's primary network, had cultivated American businessmen moving between Detroit and the Mexican oil fields. At a reception on February 3, 1943, an American oil executive named Harold Morrison spoke freely after several tequilas. He described what he had seen at Willow Run. The assembly line stretches more than a mile. The building is so vast that clouds form inside it, and sometimes it rains within the factory. 42,000 workers, thousands of them women, black and white, building the most complex machine on Earth. Morrison, unaware that a German agent sat nearby, sketched the bomber on a napkin. 2 bomb bays, each holding 4,000 pounds of ordnance. 4 engines, each producing 1,200 horsepower. Sections converging like rivers meeting the sea. Wings from one direction, fuselages from another, tails from a third. All flowing to one point on the line. When the agent asked whether such complexity caused delays, Morrison had laughed. "They said you couldn't build planes like cars, but Ford broke the bomber into 60,000 operations. Each worker does one task, again and again. A woman making breakfast yesterday is installing hydraulic lines today. They train them in days, not months. Even more precise intelligence came through Spain. Colonel José Ungría, Spanish military attaché in Washington, maintained close ties with American manufacturers and quietly passed their secrets to Berlin. At a reception that March, Ungría met Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief and the man who built Willow Run. Sorensen, believing he was speaking with a neutral ally, spoke with pride. "When I first saw Consolidated Aircraft in San Diego," he said, "they were building bombers in the open air, each one different, taking 180,000 man-hours. I knew we could do better." That night, Sorensen had sketched a new kind of factory, one that would build bombers as Detroit once built cars. The plane would move. The workers would stay. Each would repeat a single task until perfection became routine. He built an apprentice school to train 8,000 workers a week. 40% are women, he said. They're better at detailed work. Smaller hands, more patience. We have black workers on machines, boys of 16 managing logistics. Democracy means using every human resource. Through Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish channels, more reports confirmed the same astonishing truth. A Swedish engineer wrote, "The efficiency defies European understanding. 1,600 machine tools, many for single operations. Tooling cost perhaps $200 million. A Japanese naval officer radioed Tokyo. "This one factory produces more aircraft monthly than all of Japan's aviation industry." By April 1943, the German Abwehr had verified the numbers through 17 independent sources. Willow Run, 650 B-24s a month. America overall, 1,400. The figures were real and unimaginable. Desperate for proof, Canaris launched Operation Pastorius, sending 2 four-man teams by submarine to the American coast. One of them, led by George John Dash, came ashore at Amagansett, Long Island, just after midnight, June 13, 1942. Dash had lived in America for 20 years. His orders were to confirm production numbers before beginning sabotage. But within days, he surrendered to the FBI, tormented by what he knew. During interrogation, Dash told his captors, "Canaris sent me because Berlin doesn't believe your numbers. They think Willow Run is propaganda." When the FBI agent asked, astonished, "They don't believe we're producing a bomber every hour?" Dash laughed bitterly. "I tried to tell them, if Ford could build a car every minute before the war, they can build a bomber every hour now. They called me a defeatist." On April 20, 1943, Hitler's birthday, Canaris brought the full intelligence to Göring's estate. 17 sources, photographs, intercepted documents, rail manifests. "Willow Run produces 1 B-24 every hour," Canaris said. Göring, now more than 280 pounds, lifted a photograph, the assembly line stretching into the distance. "Do you take me for a fool?" he sneered. "These are wooden mock-ups. Propaganda." Canaris tried again. "They're consuming 16 million pounds of aluminum every month at this single plant." Göring barked a laugh. "Then where do they get it? From their Negro workers? From their women riveters? Canaris, you've been deceived." A week later, Canaris was ordered to brief Hitler himself at the Wolfschanze. Generals Jodl and Keitel were present, along with Goebbels. "My Führer," Canaris said quietly, "if these numbers are accurate, the bombardment of the Reich will soon exceed our defenses." Hitler stared down at the map of the Eastern Front. "The Americans can mass-produce refrigerators, not bombers," he said. "They claim to achieve in 16 months what took us 6 years. Impossible." Even Jodl, ever cautious, began to speak. "Even if 1/4 of these figures—" "The figures are false," Hitler interrupted. Unknown to them all, Canaris had already seen proof. smuggled film showing Willow Run in motion. 5 minutes of footage, rows of planes, men and women side by side, the clock visible in the frame, ticking as the line advanced. "My God," whispered his deputy, Hans Oster. "It's true." Canaris burned the film in an ashtray. "We can never show them," he said. "They'd call it treason." By November 1943, new evidence reached Berlin. A Spanish diplomat had taken aerial photographs of the factory. The images revealed parking lots filled with 12,000 cars, proof of 3 active shifts. Through the skylights, analysts counted 47 completed aircraft ready for delivery. The assembly line matched every previous report. Their conclusion was unequivocal. Photographic evidence confirms human intelligence. Production rate accurate. Immediate strategic reassessment recommended. When Göring saw the photographs, he waved them off. "American trickery," he said. "Miniature models, clever lighting." But not everyone dismissed them. Albert Speer, Minister of Armaments, one of the few Nazi leaders who truly understood industry, managed to obtain the reports. In his private diary, dated May 15, 1943, he wrote, "If these figures are even half true, we face annihilation. They produce more aircraft in a month than we do in a year. But to say this aloud would mean my death." Others saw it too. Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, a trained economist within the SS, sent a report to Himmler. The Ford Motor Company's pre-war output was 1.1 million vehicles a year. They have now converted that capacity to aircraft. By June 1944, the Americans will produce enough B-24s alone to drop our entire London bombing tonnage every day. On Christmas Eve, 1943, Canaris received the latest American projections. B-24 Liberators, 18,000. B-17 Flying Fortresses, 12,000. B-29 Superfortresses, 1,000. Fighter aircraft, 40,000. A total of 86,000 planes for 1944. Hitler's response was scornful. The Americans claim they will produce more aircraft than all nations have ever built in history. Absurd. By February 1944, Canaris was dismissed, branded a defeatist. His replacement, Walter Schellenberg, was loyal to the regime. He knew the truth, but he would never dare speak it. Then reality came. February 20th, 1944. Big week. Over 1,000 American heavy bombers struck German aircraft factories. In 6 days, they dropped more tonnage than the Luftwaffe had dropped on Britain during the entire Blitz. Fighter ace Adolf Galland reported to Göring, "I counted 800 bombers in a single formation. They're real, and they're dropping real bombs." June 6, 1944. D-Day. The morning sky over France filled with more than 11,000 Allied aircraft. The Luftwaffe could muster fewer than 300. Field Marshal Hugo Sperle sent his message to Berlin. "The enemy's air superiority is absolute. Our intelligence was correct. We were deceived not by the Americans, but by ourselves." By April 1944, Willow Run had reached its peak. That month, its workers, 42,000 men and women, produced 453 bombers in 468 hours, 1 aircraft every 63 minutes. Among them, 11,000 women, 3,800 African Americans, 1,200 disabled workers. A living rebuke to Nazi ideology. Those the Reich had called inferior were outproducing the so-called master race by orders of magnitude. After the war, German officers admitted the truth. Walter Schellenberg testified at Nuremberg, "We knew by 1943 that the American numbers were correct. Every professional understood it. But to speak that truth meant execution for defeatism." Hans Bernd Gisevius later wrote, "The tragedy was not that we lacked information. We drowned in it. The tragedy was that our leaders refused to believe it, because it contradicted their faith. Those who tried to tell the truth paid with their lives." Canaris, executed April 9, 1945, at Flossenburg. Hans Oster, the same day, The same place. Alexis von Rona, executed that October for his role in the July 20th plot. Only Gisevius escaped, fleeing to Switzerland. The final tallies would prove them all right. Between 1942 and 1945, Willow Run produced 8,685 B-24 Liberators. At its peak, 650 bombers a month, each one costing less over time, from $238,000 down to $137,000. Albert Speer, in post-war interrogation, was asked why no one had believed the intelligence. To accept that Ford could produce a bomber every hour, he said, was to accept that our entire worldview was wrong, that democracy was strong, that diversity created efficiency, that women could do men's work. It would mean admitting we had started a war we could never win. Who would tell Hitler that? In Michigan, a woman named Rose Will Monroe operated a rivet gun on that same line. She'd never worked in a factory before the war. Later, she would become the face of Rosie the Riveter. We knew we were building something that mattered, she said in 1984. Every rivet helped end the war. We worked double shifts, slept in the parking lot between them. Our brothers, our husbands, our sweethearts were flying those planes. The truth, the one no one in Berlin had dared to speak, was laid bare by the war's end. Germany had spent 12 years constructing an air force meant to rule the skies. The United States had built a single factory that ruled them instead. Willow Run had cost $200 million to build, half of what Germany had invested in its entire aircraft industry from 1933 to 1945. Its floor space covered 3.5 million square feet, nearly half the combined size of every German aircraft factory. Its electrical use, 2.5 million kilowatts per month, exceeded the consumption of entire German cities. When the final count came, the numbers spoke for themselves. Between 1940 and 1945, the United States produced 324,000 aircraft. Germany, 94,000. America had built more than 3 times as many, while fighting across 2 oceans. Historians would later call it the most consequential intelligence failure in modern warfare. Not a failure of gathering, but of belief. German agents had been precise, tireless, and correct. They had counted the rivets, traced the shipments, measured the parking lots by shadow and scale. But the truth they uncovered didn't fit the ideology that ruled them, and so truth was discarded. Dr. Gerhard Weinberg would later summarize it this way. By early 1943, German intelligence knew the numbers were right. Had that truth been accepted, Germany might have sought peace 2 years earlier, and millions of lives might have been saved. The lesson would echo far beyond the ruins of Berlin. Cognitive bias, the refusal to see what contradicts belief. Ideological blindness, the triumph of myth over mathematics. Systemic failure, when those who tell the truth are punished and those who lie are rewarded. These are not lessons confined to war. They are warnings that live on. In 1985, at the dedication of the Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run, the past came full circle. Rose Will Monroe, Rosie the Riveter herself, stood beside a former Luftwaffe pilot, Hans Rudel. Rudel looked at her, a woman whose hands had once guided the rivet gun that held his enemy's bombers together. "How did you build so many?" he asked quietly. Monroe smiled. "Honey, we just went to work every day and did our job. Nothing fancy. Punch in, build bombers, punch out. Democracy isn't complicated. It's just free people doing their best." Rudel nodded. "We were told democracy made you weak, that your diversity made you inefficient. We were told lies, and those lies killed millions." In the ruins of Berlin, May 1945, American officers discovered one last report, dated April 20th, Hitler's final birthday. "Willow Run production confirmed," it read. "We reported this truth 2 years ago. We were not believed. Germany dies not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of wisdom to believe intelligence that contradicted what we wished to be true. Let future generations learn. Reality does not bend to ideology. Mathematics does not yield to mythology. Truth ignored becomes tragedy. That report was never delivered. By then, Hitler was in his bunker. The 1,000-year Reich had hours left to live. And high above the smoldering ruins, the bombers, many born at Willow Run, made their final argument. The verdict of history is clear. German intelligence was competent. Its acceptance of truth was catastrophic. Willow Run built more than bombers. It built proof that democracy works, that freedom produces, that unity in difference is strength. German spies counted them all. Their leaders believed none. And that disbelief, more than any weapon, destroyed the Third Reich.